My goal is really just to arm you with modern scientific strategies to navigate the confusing food landscape. And I want you to reclaim your health. Remember, food is medicine, and it's the most important tool you have for a vibrant life. By making informed, intentional food choices on a constant and consistent basis, you're not just fueling your body, you're investing in your future. Welcome back to the Extend podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Darshan Shah. I'm a medical doctor who's passionate about cutting through all the clutter to bring you the most impactful insights for your health, wellness, and longevity. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most critical topics affecting every aspect of our well-being, our nutrition. As we dive into this topic over the next few solo-sodes, I'm going to give you the 20% of the information that you need to know to help you break through all of the misinformation, conflicting opinions, and adopt a sustainable eating pattern that is uniquely suited to you. Before we do that, however, I think it's really important to ask the question, what went wrong with our food in the first place? Over just the past few decades, our diets have shifted drastically. It's really important to highlight that it was never like this before. Our diet prior to the 1950s was much more nutrient-dense, had more good fats, less sugar, had far fewer empty calories, and it was devoid of chemicals. These changes in our food have led to an epidemic of obesity, diabetes, and gut disease. So what went wrong? Why has the food that should nourish us become the root cause of so many chronic illnesses? And more importantly, what can we do to fix it? In this episode, we're going to break it all down, including the historic missteps and misinformation that got us here, how science can guide us to better food choices, and some practical steps that you can use to rebuild a healthier way of eating. By the end of this episode, not only will you know what went wrong, I hope that you'll feel empowered with the knowledge that you need to make lasting, meaningful changes to your diet and your overall health. So let's go ahead and get started. To understand where we went wrong as a nation with our fundamental eating habits and food supply, we really need to revisit the last 60 years of misinformation, misguidance, and misfortune surrounding our food supply. It's extremely important to recognize that we created a completely new food situation than we were biologically evolved to manage over the last 50 to 60 years only. Here are the three key culprits that I believe made all the difference. Number one, we had many faulty guidelines from our government on dietary recommendations, specifically around carbohydrates and the food pyramid, and also cholesterol and fats. So do you remember the food pyramid that we were all taught back in school in the 1990s? The original food pyramid, introduced in 1992, was the beginning of the disaster that we now call the SAD diet, which is an acronym for the Standard American Diet. This food pyramid prioritized high carbohydrates, low-fat diets that were the base of the pyramid. We were told to eat 6 to 11 servings of refined bread, rice, cereals, and pasta daily. This encouraged a mass overconsumption of refined carbs, which is the major contributor to obesity and metabolic disorders like diabetes, Alzheimer's, and heart disease. So why did all this happen? The USDA's dietary recommendations were heavily influenced by food industry lobbyists. Grain and dairy producers had massive excesses of produce that they had to sell due to the misguided farm subsidies of post-World War II. These were over the concerns of baby boomers creating a perceived lack of food in America, and this incentivized mass overproduction of grain and dairy in the U.S. Carb overload, particularly with refined carbs, raised all of our collective insulin levels and created the metabolic crisis we are in today. Then came the double whammy. Our misguided obsession with low fat and cholesterol. All fats were lumped together as universally harmful, disregarding the benefits of healthy fats like those found in fish, avocados, nuts, and olive oil. This oversimplification stemmed from the totally flawed 7-country study that was presented to Congress by Dr. Ansel Keys. He infamously misrepresented the data by cherry-picking data from 7 countries with low-fat diets that had low heart disease rates. He totally ignored countries with high-fat diets like France that had the lowest rates of heart disease. President Eisenhower had just suffered a heart attack, so this was top of mind for Washington, D.C. So everyone, from the president down, latched onto the flawed science to make fat the enemy of America. What happened next? Well, fat was replaced by sugar, leading to skyrocketing obesity and diabetes rates. Today, we know that healthy fats are crucial for energy and brain health, and the low-fat craze has done more harm than good. If you want all the gory details, read Marty Makari's book, Blind Spots. He does an excellent job describing the continuing failure of the medical establishment and the government to reverse course on bad advice. And then came the final straw that broke the camel's back, which is the complete industrialization of food. 10 multinational massive food companies have engineered salt and sugar into food in such a way to make our food highly addictive and cause us to overeat. High fructose corn syrup, which is a byproduct of heavily subsidized corn, is now ubiquitous and a major driver of obesity and insulin resistance. They also have added food colorings, preservatives, and other chemicals to change the texture and taste of food. They've also lowered the cost of food by making it cheap using these chemicals. All of this wreaks havoc on our cellular biology and hormone systems, not to mention keeps us hungry for more with low caloric density, and also by destroying our gut bacteria that produce hormones like GLP-1 that gets us to stop eating. Industrialized farming has stripped our soil of nutrients, leaving us with produce that is less nourishing than it was decades ago. Pesticides, hormones, and GMOs are common in our food supply, compounding the problem. Seed oils and trans fats are everywhere now in processed food, creating a perfect storm of inflammation. All of these ingredients not only harm our health, but they also make us hungrier, perpetuating a cycle of overeating. As we've outsourced cooking to fast food chains and processed meals, we've completely lost control over what goes into our food. Cooking at home with thoughtfully selected ingredients has now become a rarity and is costing us our health. So, this sounds like quite a mess we've created, doesn't it? So what do we do about all this? Well, the good news is that there is hope, and it starts with some basic, almost intuitive knowledge and small, consistent changes. The first step is always to get your mindset right around all of this stuff. Understand your why. Change becomes a lot easier when you understand the reasons you're making the change. Every food choice you make affects your body, from your gut microbiome to your brain health. Recognizing this connection can inspire you to have better habits. Your particular why might be to just feel more energy or to lose fat, or maybe to improve your metabolic health, or even to be a good example to your children or to your coworkers. Maybe your why is to stop lining the pockets of those 10 food companies around the globe and shift your spending towards local, responsible, regenerative farmers. My personal why is a combination of all of these. Every time I pick up a packet of chips, I imagine some greedy corporate type laughing as the microplastics and the chemicals in the food destroy my kid's microbiome. So there's a visual that will get you to pick up a different, healthier alternative. Next, and here's a 20% of the info that makes 80% of all the difference, avoid all ultra-processed food. I'm going to talk about this in much more detail in my next solo-sode, because it is that important. For now, you need to know that this is the single greatest contributor to chronic disease in most of my patients. A focus on real whole foods is inevitable by eliminating ultra-processed food from your diet. Once you do this, we can further clean up your diet by adding organic vegetables, grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish, healthy fats like olive oil, avocados. But even all of this is not as impactful as eliminating packaged food, desserts, refined grains, and all other ultra-processed foods consistently. Finally, commit to cooking at least a few meals each week with the fresh ingredients. It's one of the simplest ways you can ensure that you're eating nutritious, toxin-free food. This helps you mend your relationship with food and relearn some of the basic human instincts that we have in our DNA for thousands of years. Incorporating these small, sustainable changes can make all the difference. Start with 1 or 2 small habits. Maybe it's just swapping out a sparkling water for soda, or maybe it's choosing to say no to the bread plate at the beginning of a meal. Over time, these small changes add up to big results. So, this is just the beginning of the conversation. In future episodes, I'll dive deeper into each macro, the role of the microbiome, how to personalize your diet, all of this to lead to optimal health. My goal is really just to arm you with modern scientific strategies to navigate the confusing food landscape. And I want you to reclaim your health. Remember, food is medicine, and it's the most important tool you have for a vibrant life. By making informed, intentional food choices on a constant and consistent basis, you're not just fueling your body, you're investing in your future.